All right, so today we're diving into the life and ideas of a true intellectual firestarter, the 18th century philosopher, radical, and mother, Mary Wollstonecraft. Now, she wasn't just a voice of her time, she was a voice that, well, would set the future ablaze.
And you know this quote? It's really the perfect way to see her. Wollstonecraft's work wasn't meant to make you feel comfortable. It was this brilliant, burning light designed to expose illusions, to incinerate old conventions, and to clarify the truth, no matter how harsh it was.
So let's really get into this idea of her as this powerful intellectual force, a clarifying flame that literally set fire to old, rotten ideas.
And that work was A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. I mean, it is hard to overstate how revolutionary this was. For centuries, Western philosophy had basically argued that reason was a guy thing. And Wollstonecraft just took a torch to that whole idea. She argued that a society that keeps half its people in a state of, educated ignorance wasn't just unfair, it was fundamentally irrational. This really brings us to the core of her philosophy, and this title says it all: A Mind Unwilling to Kneel. She wasn't just suggesting a few tweaks here and there. No, she was demanding a complete rethinking of society itself.
Okay, this gets to the absolute heart of her argument. This wasn't just about women getting treated better socially. It was what's called an ontological claim. She was arguing about the very nature of being, that women are fully human with the same capacity for reason and virtue as men. Anything less was a betrayal of both God and reason. It was that fundamental.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the intellectual battle she was fighting. I mean, at one side, you've got this hugely influential philosopher, Rousseau, saying a woman's education should be all about serving men. And then, boom, you have Wollstonecraft making a completely radical assertion that a woman's mind must be cultivated for her own sake, for her own freedom and her own moral character.
And this is so crucial. She wasn't arguing for a different kind of femininity. She was arguing against the whole idea of an ornamental one. She demanded intellectual discipline, not just being charming; moral seriousness, not just having pleasing manners; and civic participation, not being stuck in the home.
But, living as a clarifying flame, well, it comes at a price. This next section is all about the turbulent and often tragic personal cost of her intellectual brilliance. Her life was anything but quiet. It was lived with this incredible intensity. I mean, she navigated the dangers of revolutionary France all by herself, survived profound heartbreak and even a suicide attempt, and ended up marrying a fellow philosopher in what was, for the time, a very unconventional union. And then, so tragically, her life was cut short at just 38, only 11 days after giving birth to her second daughter. And that daughter was Mary Shelley. Yep, the author of Frankenstein. The intellectual fire was absolutely passed on.
And this brings us to our next section, the inheritance of fire. So, how did the clarifying flame of the mother ignite the dark, literary genius of the daughter?
This right here is the central question that just haunts Mary Shelley's masterpiece, Frankenstein. And it feels like a direct response to her mother's life's work, doesn't it? Wollstonecraft argued for education to build character and virtue. And Shelley, well, she explored the horrific consequences of not having that, of creating life without a soul. You can almost see the dialogue playing out across generations. The mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, she poses the foundational question: how do we build a better humanity through education? And then the daughter, Mary Shelley, comes along and explores the dark, monstrous answer to what happens when we fail, when we create beings without taking responsibility for their moral development. For Wollstonecraft, these weren't just abstract ideas. They were the principles that fueled her fire. She believed reason and emotion weren't enemies, but they had to be disciplined together. She knew that real love could only exist between equals, and she understood that dignity isn't something that's just handed to you. It's forged in courage.
So this leads us to the final and probably most important question. Why does this 18th century thinker still burn so brightly today? Why does she still matter?
Because here's the thing you really have to get about Wollstonecraft. Her vision was way bigger than what we now call feminism. She saw the education and liberation of women not as an end in itself, but as a necessary step for the moral and intellectual maturation of the entire human species.
And wow, her warnings echo so powerfully in our world today. She reminds us that freedom without a strong moral character can be lost so easily. That an education focused only on skills with no moral seriousness just leaves us empty. And that relying on pure emotion without the structure of reason can lead to its own kind of tyranny.
So please, don't remember Mary Wollstonecraft as just a footnote to some famous male poets or as just another name in a history book.
Remember her as she was, a clarifying flame. The fire that burned away old prejudices and made it possible for us to even imagine a more equal, a more rational, and a more fully human world.